The following is a tutorial on how to use the configuration wizard and some of its first steps. This tutorial is based on MotionLab 3 version 1.3.5 and firmware version 1.5.2. And if you are not using these specific versions, you might find slight changes in some of the steps or the whole graphical user interface. First of all, let's introduce what the configuration wizard is. The configuration wizard is a guided step-by-step process that allows you to configure the main components of your system in a simple and user-friendly way. If you do all the steps successfully, you should get a functional system at the end of the process, which can then be used for testing or for fine-tuning operations in order to get the last bit of performance out of your system. Now, in order to access the configuration wizard, you simply have to click on one of the Start Now buttons under the new project title in the MotionLab 3 starting window. This will open a new wizard tab in the middle of your screen with the first step of the wizard in it. In addition, you will see here on the left a step-by-step tree which will show you all the steps that the wizard has and a blue dot marking the current step that you're currently at. However, this does not mean that you will have to perform all these steps, since some of them might not apply to your specific system. Now, the first step of the configuration wizard is this welcome step. This is used to introduce the whole purpose of the tool to the user and also to make some wiring and safety checks before starting the whole process. It is important to go over these guidelines before starting in order to avoid future problems when running some tests of the wizard. Once you are finished with all the checks, you can click on the next button and move into the next step. The second step of the configuration wizard is the communication step. This is the step which you connect to the drive either through Ethernet or CAN open communications. Therefore, what you need to do is select the communication interface that you're going to be using and then set the proper communication settings for such a communication. For Ethernet interface, you will have to select the network adapter that you are connecting to the port that you have connected the drive to. You will have to input the IP address that you are using and also the transmission protocol. And for CAN open communications, you will have to select what device are you using to connect from the drive to the computer and also select the baud rate of such communication. In our case, we're going to use Ethernet and with these default configurations that the wizard has detected. Once you have input the right parameters for your particular case, you can click Scan, and then what you should find is that it appears this loading categories message at the bottom, which is basically loading all the parameters from the dictionary of the drive so that MotionLab 3 can have access into it. And when the progress bar at the bottom is finished, you will get a drive detected message here on top, which will mean that the drive has been fully interfaced, so you are 100% connected with it. Before moving on though, it is important to mention that if you struggle with this step when attempting to connect to your drive, please refer to our other series of videos, how to connect to your drive through Ethernet or CAN open, for more details. There might be some wiring and other configuration issues outside of MotionLab 3 that could be affecting here, and that we're not going to be covering in this tutorial. Now, once you are connected to the drive, you can click on to the third step of the wizard, which is the Save Torque Off step, or STO for short. The main purpose of this step is to check that you have properly wired the STO pins on the drive. Otherwise, the power stage of the drive will not be available and you will not be able to provide power to the motor under no circumstances, since this is a hardware protection and there's no firmware or software that you can use to override or work around it. Basically, what you need to do is connect the STO1 and STO2 pins in the I/O connector to a +5 volt power source, and then share the ground of such power source with the ground of the drive and the STO return pins. For more details, do not hesitate to check the wiring sections of our product manual, but we will not go over into more detail on this video. Now, in order to verify that the STO protection is disabled, you have this STO test on the left of your screen, which will basically be looking at the STO status here displaying under the display widget on the top right of your screen. If the STO status is displaying a value of 23, you can already know that the test will be successful and that you have connected the STO properly. If you are seeing a different value, then it means that you either have not connected one of the two pins correctly or that something is affecting from the power source. And what you will get is that when you click the STO test, you do not get a success message, but a failure. And when you get a failure, you will be able to check on the terminal here what has gone wrong. But if you get a success, you will basically see only the steps that the STO test has performed in order to check that the STO in itself is correct and it has been properly wired. Now, when you manage to get a success on this test, you are ready to move on to the next step. This is all for this video, but if you want to learn more about how to use MotionLab 3 to configure your servo drives, please do not hesitate to check our MotionLab 3 series of YouTube videos, and also do not hesitate to check out our website.